Well, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well this morning. I wanted to share a review with you, but first I'd like to send out my well wishes and hopes that everyone's property and well-being fared well with Hurricane Ian. I took a walk this morning down to my little spot by the creek here, and the trail is covered. There's debris everywhere. There's debris in the yard. I just cleaned out the gutters on the house, but with that said, no real damage. Landon had his trampoline flipped over. We flipped it back over, or he flipped it back over rather, and his slide on his playset came down. We're going to repair that today. But I wanted to come to you with a one-year review of the Helle Eggen knife. Now, I want somebody to correct me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. It's spelled H-E-L-L-E, as you see in the title, but I have heard some Scandinavians pronounce it that way, so we're going to pronounce it Helle. This is a one-year review on this knife, and I have to say it has become my go-to camp knife, hiking knife, and I'm going to share with you some pros and cons on this knife, but overall, I love the knife. I've become fond of Nordic culture and Scandinavian bladesmithing, so I think my collection is going to veer that way a little bit. I'll still carry everyday folding pocket knives to work with, and I love the Essie American-made knives. I'm going to do a review on the Zula 2, a 6-month review on that soon, but let's just jump right into it. So let's look at the sheath first. Sit that right there. So the sheath is very nice. It's simple leather. It's got a neat little Nordic design here. You probably can't see that there on the camera, but nothing too fancy. But just a solid sheath. And so let's get on the review with the knife. So yeah, so let's take a look at it. I know that I have mentioned this knife in a collection video I did some time back, but you need to use a knife for, I think, for several months to a year to really get a full appreciation of the blade. So here we are with a 4-inch blade, and as I mentioned before, if you haven't seen that video, this is a triple laminated blade. Helle does some of their knives in Sandvik steel and some of their knives in this triple laminated steel, which basically means is that the core of this knife is high carbon, but the laminated part on the outside is stainless steel. More than likely it's Sandvik as well. But I love this knife for the fact that I don't have to worry so much about rust. I do keep it dry. I keep it out of the sheath when I'm not using it. I do appreciate the fact that it's stainless on the outside. The curly birch handle just has a really nice feel to it, and the contour of the handle is just, it fits my hand perfect. So with that said, the curly birch makes this a super light knife. Just adds to the joy of carrying it. As far as tasks go, it does a pretty good job with fire sticking because of the Scandi grind blade. Those blades are designed for woodwork. They do okay at food prep, and they do okay at some other tasks, but that's what these knives were made for, is to work with wood. So that Scandi grind is great for that. I will say this knife, out of all the knives I've ever bought, came the sharpest out of the box of anything I've ever owned from the factory. I don't know how they do it, but it's razor sharp when it comes out. I've sharpened it several times since I bought the knife. Let's take a moment to talk about some pros and cons of this knife. So the pro of this knife is the weight. When you're backpacking or just a day hike or just carrying it on your hip around camp, I found that a really heavy survival blade knife it gets uncomfortable. This knife, you almost don't even know it's there because it's so light. It's balanced well. And I mentioned the sharpness. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I have no real heavy complaint. Okay, let's spend a minute talking about the cons of this blade. So really the only drawback to some of these Scandinavian blades, and there's a reason why a lot of them aren't full tang, but this knife is not full tang. So as you can see right here, it's got a stick tang. The tang comes to the end right there, but it's a durable knife, don't get me wrong, it's very durable. But I do not use this knife to baton with or chop with, unless I'm chopping something really small, say the size of my fingers or something like that. It's not designed for that. I carry an axe or another knife that's more suitable for splitting wood at camp. But that's what this knife is not for that. So that's a little bit of a con, but what you get from that is the lighter knife. Another con would be food prep. So if this was your only knife to carry on a trip or something like that, it's not going to be the best slicer because of the Scandi grind. This is more of a wedge type blade. So if you're doing fine cuts on, say, a tomato or a potato or something like that, it's not going to perform that great. Now, it's not super, the spine is not super thick, so it's not going to make a mess of your food like maybe the SE5 is. I tried that on one trip. It was the only knife I brought, and it absolutely butchered, in a bad way, the food. But this knife wouldn't be that bad for it, so it could be your one knife on a trip. So if I'm bringing this knife as my primary knife, I'm going to bring a hatchet, and 9 times out of 10, and obviously a saw. So, but yeah, there's not a whole lot of bad things I can say about this knife. Doesn't have really too many cons. So anyway, this video has lasted a little longer than I expected. And so I hope you guys plan to join us next weekend for Overland East. I hopefully have a video coming out real soon. Then after Overland East, I have a trip planned for southwestern Virginia and the Highlands. I hope to spend a day or two by the New River. And anyway, we've gotten long-winded here. So if you're looking for a great, not too expensive bushcraft knife, I recommend the Helle Eggen. Cheers.